Hey y'all, thank you so much for joining me for my vendor wax chop and chat. My name is Stacy. I'm super excited to be chopping 2 loaves of Teddy Bees today, a mini loaf from L3 and I think 1 souffle from Britta's. Going to be a fun little chop and chat. As a quick reminder, this is going to be an all vendor wax chopping session. My name is Stacy. I do use mostly Scentsy Warmers as I am a Scentsy consultant, and those warmers tend to be 25 watts and up, and they're on for about 15 hours a day. Now, this first one that I'm going to be melting is Salty Lavender from Teddy Bees, and it is one of my absolute favorites. This is, I think, a fairly popular blend. It lists as sweet lavender with salty sea air and toasted marshmallow. I honestly feel like Teddy Bees has some of the strongest glitter game out there in the vendor wax community. It's just gorgeous, just her colors and the way they match up with the wax. It's going to be beautiful melting, and I can't wait. I do have a complicated relationship with glitter. I haven't specifically had a problem with Teddy Bees, but sometimes if the glitter is chunky or overwhelming, it can affect wax performance, and it can be a challenge to clean. But I've not had that problem with Teddy Bees ever. I am going to be chopping up 2 loaves from Teddy Bees, and I'm going to be storing them in 2 different ways, but I start the same way regardless, and that is to cut it in half so that I can get a solid edge. And then I'm just going to cut it in the middle all the way down. And then basically, not to talk too much about cake bites, but then basically I'm going to cut it like I cut a cake bite, um, which is going to be to put 2 um, cuts down either side. And then I'm going to do the same thing vertically that I do horizontally, just kind of making a little square of cuts. And I find that this gives me a good amount for salty lavender in particular. And I do find for most of my Teddy Bees, this does tend to be about the ratio that I go with. Um, but there are some, like Perfect Storm, I add 2 additional cuts in there um, because of the way that I like to spread the scent out in my open concept. So it really just depends on the fragrance, how I like to chop the loaf, and I'm usually experienced with a fragrance before I have a loaf of it. That did not happen with Blushed because of Steph the Scented Gemini and Alexis Schluter on YouTube. They both were big fans of Blushed, and so I jumped all in on that one, and I'm really glad that I did. But I did also get a souffle. So I practiced with the souffle before I really got into chopping my loaf because I don't want to end up over or under chopping my loaf. Now, one of the things that I'm going to point out with this one, I'm going to do it a little differently because I'm not keeping the container on like the loaf tin. I'm not going to use that on salty lavender. I want to show you the difference of cutting the wax kind of face down like I did on the one up top there, and what happens when you cut it kind of face up when you have it sitting on the bottom of the loaf tin as you cut it. It doesn't stay together as well. So if you are trying to return your wax, and I feel like this is true to anything that comes in a loaf shape, if you're trying to return it to the tin that it came from, with vendor wax in particular, it is best to chop it face down, because if I try to kind of keep this together, especially when it's 2 layers, and turn it over, I'm not going to be successful. I'm trying. Let me see if I can do it. Now I feel like I want to do it. Oh, no. No, failure. So that's fine with this one, but it is just something to think about as you are kind of chopping your wax in looking at what it is specifically that you might want to do. Um, for me, I love salty lavender, and I am going to get through this super fast. I do find that salty lavender is a loaf that as soon as it's chopped, I am gonna kind of whiz through it because I melt it in multiple locations. So I'm not going to try and retain it in the loaf. When I keep it in the loaf, when I cut it like I'm going to cut the next one and I try and keep it in the loaf tin, that's because I'm going to be likely long-term storing either half of it or, some volume of it in the same bag. So I just like to keep it in the loaf tin there. But salty lavender is just such a beautiful lavender scent. I really enjoy it in bedrooms and bathrooms, but my favorite warm for this is actually as just a personal desk melt. So I really enjoy, like, when I'm having a lot of seated work at my desk. I have a personal warmer that just sits right beside me, and I'll pop a cube or two in there. So good. I think a lot of times when we think about lavender scents, we tend to think about using them during relaxing periods of time, but it can also be a really nice addition to kind of seated busy work. That may just be me. I don't know. But for me, I do enjoy like mints and lemons and a coffee scent every now and then, and kind of more of those kind of identified as productive smelling scents. But for me, sometimes it's nice to just add that kind of lavender chill vibe to an otherwise incredibly busy space. Now, next up, I have Bonfire Nights. This is another gorgeous scent. It's listed as bonfires, cashmere, vanilla, sandalwood, and roasted marshmallow. I really enjoy this one as well. I have only had a souffle of this, but you can see here, look at the beautiful stars. And that iridescent wax is just absolutely gorgeous. This is going to be so lovely melting. Now, this is one that I do intend to return to its loaf pan because I am not going to melt through this quite as quickly. This is the very last loaf that I have of Bonfire Nights, and so we've got a mini hoarding situation. I'm probably going to allow myself to get through half of this, and then I will put it back into my long-term Teddy Bee storage. I'm going to do the same thing here. I just am going to be a little more intentional to make sure that I cut it on its face after I cut it down this horizontal way. So I cut it in half and then in half again. And now I'm going to just make the same little tic-tac-toe board where I do 2 vertical cuts and then 2 horizontal cuts. I just find cutting it in half like this to make the 2 smaller tic-tac-toe boards allows me to be more precise. I do also have some dexterity challenges. For me, my blade is, I think, big enough, and I have tried in the past to just cut through the whole thing without dividing it in half first, but I don't have as good of luck getting the most consistent size slices when I do that. So I just kind of have adopted this method. I really do enjoy Bonfire Nights, though. This is a beautiful one. It's not, to me, as unique as Salty Lavender, um, but it's still just an absolutely wonderful blend. And the cashmere is very relaxing. I primarily only use this as a bedroom melt. I don't really melt it in other places. I think it would probably be lovely in closed concept living and open concept. I just have personally not tried that, but I do enjoy this, and I'm excited to have some more on deck. And then I'm going to use half and store half. But for me right now, I'm going to make sure to kind of push these 2 pieces back together and then grab that loaf pan and let's hope for the best. The other little tip that I'll give you is you can use either a cloth or, like I'm using a paper towel, is I just will lean under the paper towel to make that flip. That way you don't have to worry about pieces falling out. And then I can grab any additional little pieces and put them in there as I slide them in. But I just find because this is more solid and flat, it doesn't, well, it's not flat, but it's flatter than my salty lavender is, which is kind of puffed out. This is just going to be much easier for me to long-term store. When you look at, let me just grab, see, this is what the salty lavender bag looks like. It's just full and a little bit puffy, where the wax can get a little bit messy, and the Bonfire Nights is just going to be a little bit tidier inside that loaf pan. But the salty lavender is going to get used up so quickly. It's not going to get smushed around. I mean, you're probably going to see it in my next vendor empties. Honestly, I really can get through a loaf of salty lavender so quickly. Um, so next up, let me just do a little bit more tidying. I'm going to be grabbing my mini loaf from L3. This is Mexican fried ice cream cinnamon sugar cafe mocha. And this is one that I have no experience with. It smells beautiful on cold to me. I am not the best cold sniffer, so I try and hold my judgments until I have warm, melted something. It's just, I like to try and keep my mind open because things definitely develop on warm for me. These are such cute little tins. I love L3 mini loaves. I'm going to miss them. Now, even though this L3 mini loaf is a more shallow loaf pan, I'm still going to follow a similar process where I am going to cut it along this kind of horizontal edge as well. So I'm going to cut it right down the center first, and then I'm just going to set it on the cut edge and cut it down. I guess we would say its width or its thickness. That was not center. Good job, me. There we go. The primary reason that I do this is because I want to have the capacity to kind of dial in how much or how little wax I use. And so, like right now for this little section, I have 4 pieces, and just with one more cut to make like a T shape on top, I'll have 8 pieces out of this single mini loaf. And then when I follow the process on this other half, I'm going to ultimately end up with 16 pieces that I can play with and spread out amongst my warmers. I think I might actually try and return this to its loaf tin as well. So, phew, I'm glad I was able to turn that one around. A mini loaf tin is easier to navigate than those larger loaves. There's no denying the value of the size if you love a fragrance of a loaf, and so I do enjoy buying loaves. I think it's a great thing, but when it comes to chopping them, it's a little easier to make mistakes that can be kind of hard to deal with. And also, you're talking about then storing that wax while you're actively using it for a longer period of time. So, I actually do think my preference is souffles, tubs, and mini loaves, but there are some fragrances that you just got to get the loaf. So, there we go. Yay. I'm going to just try and grab these and add them back in, and here we have this wonderful little L3 mini loaf. I'm excited to worm through this. I just got through some, I think what it was, Teddy B's key lime ice cream and cake, and that was a new experience to me, just ice cream in general as a melt, and I really liked it, so I'm excited to try this blend. I purposefully went looking through my stash to see if I could find any other ice creams, and I found this one. This last one that I'm chopping is one of my Summer Olympics picks from the awesome challenge that Martha's Fragrance Corner and Shijo have sponsored. Also, you guys, Shijo has her YouTube channel now. It's Shijo's Scented Studio. You definitely need to check it out. I love her insights on wax and her art. And this is The Night She Disappeared from Britta's Creepy Treasures. It's sugared amber and plum, barnwood, and pink sugar. I haven't smelled this on warm yet. It does smell beautiful and cold. I honestly am not the best cold sniffer in the universe, so I do like to kind of hold my thoughts until I have smelled it on warm because things very often change for me. This souffle arrived to me in the dog days of summer, and so it has already been melted once, I believe, just in the box. It may have been melted a lot in the box. I do not think I will be using this particular souffle tin again, but I can tell you the fragrance is fragrancing, so I'm not at all concerned about performance. I tend to get great performance out of Britta's in my home. I am going to do the same thing here that I did with the other loaves, which is that I'm cutting it in half and then setting it on the cut side and cutting it again, just so that I can get kind of as many pieces as I possibly can. I do think with this souffle, this is likely very, very unnecessary because my best guess is that I am going to get about 6 warmerfuls out of this, which is probably going to be 2 warms. And by me cutting it this way, I am going to have 12 pieces, but ultimately I think I'm going to end up putting 2 pieces in each warmer. So, but this does just smell so beautiful. I have to say, I really do love this transitional time of year. I do identify more as a mood melter as opposed to a seasonal melter, but I'm having so much fun with melting through all of these fall scents that are coming my way and really enjoying those. And yet I'm still enjoying the summer scents. It's both and for me right now. I'm really loving all of it. I'm excited to melt this one and see how it does in my home. I am pretty optimistic. I can't wait to see how it does. Thank you guys so much for watching and hanging out with me while I chop through some of this wax. I'm really excited to melt these, and I'm also excited to hear in the comments below, what are you currently melting? Are you summer vibes? Are you fall? Are you both? Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell on your way out.